All right, we're live, baby, but we gotta let it breathe just for a second. Bring Facebook into this bad boy, and then we're gonna get things a cooking, and we are good. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, as always, my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zack, um, our morning brethren stole our thunder, so to speak, with the gut reaction title, right? But it was apropos. It was literally cutting edge. They're about to go live. The news breaks. Perfect timing for a gut reaction. And yet we've yet to share our gut reaction. So let's start. First things first. The Broncos release Justin Simmons, veteran safety, 8 years since about 2020. Well, since about 2019, perennial all-star, meaning he's either going to get you an all-pro or a Pro Bowl nod. Gone. What was your gut reaction?
I kind of find it funny, first of all, of the social media reaction, acting like he was this first ballot Hall of Famer. He was a very good but not great player. The Broncos haven't won jack squat since Simmons has been around. And if we're being honest, Chad, this is what the Broncos should have done in 2017, is commit to a full rebuild. No more bandages or half measures. Just rip everything off, let things heal naturally, and do it the right way, build it back up. Simmons is the casualty in that, just like Jerry Jeudy might be, or Cortland Sutton might be, Garrett Bowles might be. This is the reality of the business. But I thought for a divorce, it wasn't as rocky as the Russ divorce, in the sense that the Broncos did right by Simmons. They didn't hold him hostage. They didn't tie him up in trade talks. They allowed him to join a new team early or get a jump start on free agency and probably sign with a contender. They also did right by themselves by clearing almost $15 million in salary cap space that they really desperately needed, and are not delaying, but kind of leaning into that aforementioned rebuild. So, sometimes even the most bitterest decisions in the NFL, it is a merciless business. They have favorable outcomes for both parties, and I feel like this was a favorable outcome for both sides, as tough as a pill as it is to swallow.
It's a bummer, man, because I'm sure I've said it on the podcast. I mean, I don't have like an episode date and timestamp for y'all, but you'll probably recall that when I would get asked to Zach about, well, what about Justin Simmons? If they really need to whittle this thing down to become cap compliant, of all the different cap casualty candidates, he was the last guy on the list, right? Like he would be the last guy to kind of turn the lights off, so to speak. So I'm not going to lie, I was moderately surprised by the move, especially it being the first after the Russ thing. The Russ thing, we saw it coming a mile away. We knew that basically was in the cards from the time they sat him down. Simmons, it came as a little bit of a surprise, and I can only kind of anticipate and wait to see, obviously, Zach, what's going to become of other cap casualty candidates like Bowles, like Sutton. We know Tim Patrick is 99% chance headed out the door. But, I think back to, obviously, a lot's going to get made of his off the field impact in the community, and then how he represented the Broncos. It's gonna be sorely missed. But really, his on field stuff as a player, maybe not Hall of Famer, because the team never did anything, right? Like, unfortunately, as a pro, Zach, all 8 years of his tenure as a Bronco were the 8 years of the basement stuff, the missing the playoffs. But I'll never forget last thing when he came into the league in 2016 as a third round pick. And if memory serves, it was a comp pick for what it's worth. He came in on the heels of Super Bowl 50. Everyone was excited because, the Super Bowl 50 defense, the no-fly zone, was still mostly intact. That was the last year that you still had Ware and Vaughn. You still had Wolfie. You still had Talib Harris, Roby, and TJ Ward, and Darian Stewart. TJ Ward, obviously, for only a time. But he fit in where he could get in and, gave those guys the respect. Obviously, Zach made the most of the time he spent with those dudes, learning and just soaking it all in. But the ship really turned around for him when Vic Fangio showed up in 2019, and that's where the all-star version of Justin Simmons began.
I thought you were going to mention his play against the Saints in his rookie year with the blocked extra point that was run back for a 2-point conversion. It started off with a bang in his rookie season, but We could also talk about the Sam Darnold play against the Jets in 2020, where the almost Justin Simmons name was born. But Chad, I only bring up the fact the Broncos haven't won anything with him because it's factual. He's led the league in picks, 30 interceptions, Chad, since he's entered the league in 2016. How many playoff games have the Broncos won? How many winning records have the Broncos had? He's going to be 31 in November. I think he deserves to play for a winning team or play in a playoff game at this stage of his career.
Indeed. And like the Duchess, so good to see you, Michaela. Thank you for the top rope super chat. I've missed you being gone the 2.5 weeks or so that I definitely missed you. She says, we are in such bad shape. Sad about Justin. I think every card-carrying Broncos fan was bummed about today's news. Probably flip a coin on how many Broncos fans or what the ratio of disappointed Broncos fans were on the Russ thing. With Justin Simmons, it's 100%. Everyone, even the pragmatists who understand why it needs to happen, or at least the Broncos' motivations for it happening, are bummed about seeing such a great guy, great leader, great community guy, and then obviously a prolific producer on the field being shown the door. But Zach, you're hitting on it here. This is, we could anticipate certain things coming with the Russ move and all this, but this is the move that telegraphs to the fan base without actually spelling it out. We're starting over. We're raising it to the ground, and we're going to rebuild it in Sean Payton's image for better or for worse. I think it'll be for better, but this is unfortunately a sign, Zach, that it's not probably going to get any better this year. It'll probably actually, relative to how the Broncos finished this past season, the number of wins, get a little bit worse before it gets better because you're losing a leader like you did in Simmons. There'll be more to come. You got quarterback instability. Even if you get one of the top guys somehow in the draft at quarterback, you're going to go through the ups and downs of that rookie learning curve in year one. You're still dealing with, of course, your financial hands being tied behind your back relative to the Russell Wilson impact on the salary cap. So it's unfortunately probably going to get a little bit worse before it gets better. And that, Zach, combined with that realization, combined with the fact that such a great guy and player is departing, is why Broncos fans are in a bad way today.
I don't think there's anything the Broncos can do that would convince Michaela that they're not in bad shape. This just kind of added more fuel to the fire. I'm going to go against the grain a little bit. Shocker, I know. I'm not that bummed about the moves that are being made. I'm not that bummed about the short-term implications going through a rebuild. Because again, this should have happened years ago, Chad, and all the Broncos did was kick the can down the road with veteran holdover quarterbacks, bad draft picks, opening a phantom title window with Russell Wilson. It all brought them to this point. If they would have just committed to this in 2017, for example, they'd be contenders today. You're going to have to take your lumps. You're going to have to suffer through, which probably going to be like Chad was talking about, a less than ideal 2024 season. But unless you want to remain where the Broncos have been, either a below average team or average, non-competitive, middling, you have to do it. Every successful team has rebuilt and reloaded. They've got to get it right in the draft. You got to find your quarterback, but this is step one, Chad. Getting rid of all the bloated contracts, all the aging veterans, all those who are not deemed foundational talents. And obviously Simmons was not deemed that.
Honestly, I think there is, once you kind of look past the disappointment and that raw gut reaction, there is a little bit, Zach, of a relief in the realization here that the Broncos are finally dispensing with the kind of false narrative that they're one player, one quarterback, one whatever away from being a relevant team. They were relevant this past year. They were in the hunt down the stretch, but a competitor. Like no more half measures, no more Band-Aids over bullet holes. We're doing it the hard way. And I hope it applies to quarterback this year in terms of doing it the old-fashioned way. Like, you got to get your guy. And you know what? There's always that chance, Zach. Look at the Stroud and the Texans. Right. Nobody, I'm telling you, nobody in the NFL media sphere was predicting the Houston Texans to do jack squat this year. You never know. It was a rookie head coach. It was a rookie quarterback, highly drafted one, albeit, but a rookie. No one was predicting how that would shake out. So it's hard to fully predict. That's one of the great things about the NFL is the parity and the unpredictability of it all. But to me, Zach, the last thing here, I'll tie it up, serve it back. There again, a little bit of a relief of we finally have a team that's being honest with itself and going, okay, yeah. We can't, no more half measures. Like we just have to bite the bullet on this thing. And it's not just biting the bullet on Russ. It's biting the bullet on the realization that we have to tear it down to build it back up.
The Texans, they had 2 first-round picks. Fortunately for them, they hit on both with Stroud and Will Anderson. That'll get you in contention pretty quickly. But step 2 now is finding the quarterback. And I've heard like the Sam Darnold rumors or whatever. It doesn't do anything for me to move the needle. You're going to stay where you are in neutral. But if it means, I'll say this before we get to the Papa Bear, if it means going through and taking your medicine, going through a down 2024 season, at least we'd have no expectations for one. But if it means going through one more year, it's been 8 years of this, what's one more, to ensure that they're competitive by 2025 and by 2026, they can possibly be in another championship window if and only if they get the quarterback right. That to me, like you said, is a relief. It's a breath of fresh air from the failed approaches in the post-Peyton Manning era. Muted.
Sorry, I was on mute. It's a team being honest with itself. And after 8 years of, I mean, we've seen the fruits, guys, of what internal dishonesty, self-dishonesty, what the fruits and wages of that line of thinking are. And I don't blame the Broncos for thinking the way that they did for so long, because it is the NFL. The pressure's on. You know, most guys, whether they're executives, Zach, GMs, coaches, you know, even players, they don't have all the time in the world to, preside over and the patience to preside over a rebuild. But eventually, when you've tried every stopgap retread quarterback under the sun and every method of which you can obtain one, and nothing doing, it's time to just pay the piper. The Papa Bear, so good to see you, big dog. Much love and respect to you, David. Good evening, right back at you. Catch up on a few supers here. David Youngkin jumping in early, too. Thank you, my friend. He says, no one is safe, not even the water boy. Yeah, that's kind of how it feels right now.
Joe Montana.
Exactly. Casey Nickel, one of our longtime cornerstone super chat superstars, jumping in to say, I know it's a sad day, but my son and future quarterback of the Broncos, Cohen James Nickel, was born this morning.
Nice. Congrats, Casey.
Dope, dude.
That's
Congrats.
awesome.
That is so cool. That is so cool. Cohen. That's a cool name. I like it. I dig it. Cohen James Nickel has a little bit of a ring to it. So congrats to you and Mama Bear. Hope everyone's doing well, my friend.
Thank you for sharing, Casey. It's a bit of positive news and a bleak time in Broncos country. So definitely appreciate you letting us peek behind the curtain of what's going on with your family. Much blessings to you.
Indeed, Mazzles. We got Naj jumping in, top roping it here. Bro,
Thank you,
love you, big dog. He says, hey, brothers, this may be one of the most poorly run organizations in football. We have little talent, and our second best defender is gone. Sickening. This coach and front office has shown nothing to inspire hope for us fans. Yeah, I mean, if there, Zach, ever is a day for the utilization of absolutes in our discourse, today is one of them, because, we're talking about the raw emotion and the disappointment of seeing a near and dear player, a player near and dear to every fan's heart, hitting the bricks. I'm not going to even try and pick nits in what you're saying, Naj. I don't fully agree with every little thing you're saying. I get the vibe, and the vibe I do agree with. I feel it. I should say, like, I share that vibe with you. Like, there's a disappointment and just, I don't know. There's a little bit of a thread, Zach, of apathy. But being the guy that I am, and Naj, I know you're this kind of guy too. I mean, you're the walking shot of life. There's also like excitement, optimism, hope that, okay, we're starting over. The possibilities are endless. But Sean Payton, Zach, I've said this before. Fans were stoked on Sean Payton. He lost a little bit of that love and honeymoon grace, we'll call it, with the poor start, right? The ugly start to the season. And then that was only compounded even after they went and won 6 games in a row in the middle of the season. that kind of losing the honeymoon thing was compounded by the way he sat down Russell Wilson, which in hindsight, I mean, you can't really find a good reason, or not a good reason, a good benefit to it being done when it was. Like, he might as well have just finished out the season, but I'm digressing here. Now Sean Payton goes into the offseason with a little bit of that luster off of his name relative to Broncos fans, and then this. So Broncos fans right now are very much, Zach, in a kind of holding pattern of, okay, all right, you're going to come in and be the bull wrecking the China shop. You know, you better get to proving your oats, so to speak, like ASAP.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said everything I was going to touch on. Naj, you know, put myself in a fan's shoes. I understand how you feel. It's another gut punch in a series of gut punches for 8 years in a row. But as an analyst of the team, or someone who covers them from a kind of a different vantage point, I am hopeful and inspired by what the Broncos have done. Again, committing to a rebuild, ripping off the Band-Aid, doing it properly this time. They might be in the market hopefully they are, for a quarterback in the draft. That's exciting because they haven't really committed to going that route in a little while, Chad. And also, you're kind of exercising the ghosts of Broncos past. And it's not like, to me, it's not comparable when the Broncos traded Von Miller, or when the Broncos even traded DT, what the Broncos did today by releasing Simmons. They haven't won anything since Simmons has been around. And what Sean Payton is doing is kind of, maybe I'm taking too naive of a viewpoint on this. He's kind of clearing out all the failure in the post-Peyton Manning era. And it could come at a cost of good players, but he's molding the team, like you said, in his vision. And to me, it needed to be done, and the fact that it is being done gives me a little bit of hope.
Bakes Productions 2008 jumping in. How do they say it across the pond? 79 pence? Is that how they say it? You know what I'm saying? Like 79 cents. In the States, it might be 79 pennies. Don't they say pence? I mean, I don't know. I speak American English. Either way, Bakes, bro, thank you very much for the super chat support. It means a lot to us. Whether it's 79 pence, 79 bucks, it all means the same thing, that you're digging into your pocket for the hard-earned dollars and monies and whatever, in your case, pounds, euros, whatever it might be, that you work for to support what we do here. And we take that as an immense honor. So thank you, my friend. And we also have here Colby, the Triple C on Facebook, jumping in to say, it looks like we're blowing it up. We're blowing it up real good. That we are, my friend. That's the big takeaway from today's events. Phil in Tucson, proven every time that Broncos country is not a geographic location. You know what it is. He says, good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. Sorry to see Justin Simmons go, but I feel we treated him better than we did Vaughn. Hashtag Buckham, MHH for life, Broncos for life. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I don't know, Zach, exactly how it all unfolded, how hard they tried to trade him first, why they were unable to trade him, other than, generally speaking, the safety market is softening around the NFL. Teams are realizing, wait a minute, we don't need to pay near on $20 million for a safety, even the elite ones. But what's your thoughts here for Phil?
I think the Broncos did right by Vaughn. They traded him to a team that won the Super Bowl that same year, gave him a chance to compete when the Broncos were the definition of uncompetitive, uncompetitive, whatever. But it's a business, Phil, and Russell Wilson learned this. Vaughn learned that. He talked about it. DT learned that. God rest his soul. And Justin Simmons learned that today. It's a merciless, cold, hard, brutal business. But they also did right by doing it now. They could have kept him until the draft to try to squeeze a draft pick out of another team, or held him hostage on the roster. They gave him a almost week head start on finding his next suitor. And for that, I think he would be grateful.
Shout out to the Michael Ronquillo, jumping in early as soon as we connected to Facebook with some stars. Much love and respect to you, big dog. Cody Dubb in the house. Great to see you, Cody. Appreciate the super. He says, is there a way to start trading basically everyone, get as much money off the books to give Russ? Hold on. Get as much money off the books to give to Russ to have very little cap hit next year on him. No. If you're really asking that, the answer is definitely no. But you know what? The Broncos, I can promise you, aren't done whittling this thing. I mean, this move, Zach, what did it free up? 14.5 mil, something like that for Simmons. That gets him basically right on the bubble of cap compliant, but they don't have any money to spend. Like, they have nothing to fill any holes whatsoever, and they only have 6 picks in the draft, one of which they gotta, they're hoping and needing to find a quarterback. Might not shake out that way, but they got to make a few more moves to be able to actually do something in free agency. So it's just getting started, but I wish you could do something like that. Although I don't know how good it would be for the product on the field, Zach, if you just traded everyone to get even on the Russ money.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to try to unload who you can. You're going to talk about converting bonuses and restructuring contracts. And you're right, they're almost cap compliant. They're still a little bit over the salary cap. Fortunately, Cody, if they restructure Zach Allen, for example, they would be under the cap again. And the more moves they make, I mean, if they do cut a few players, trade Judy, cut DJ Jones, cut Tim Patrick, they can have probably $15-20 million under the cap with which to work. And it's not going to land them any sort of tier 1 player in free agency, but it can land them a couple B players that can help fill out the roster in 2024.
Mike Edel jumping in, a Mount Rushmore superstar here at MHH. We love you, Mike. He says, I'm with Zach. This needed to happen. I'm sad about Justin, not sad about Russ. Bottom line is the NFL is a business. I'm going to enjoy the season watching our new young talent and not listening to the cornball Russ. Go MHH. I think I used that word in an article either yesterday or today when I was writing up. Oh, it was today on the Mecklenburg thing, Mecklenburg slamming him, his leadership or lack thereof, in Carl's opinion. I think I called Russ a little bit of a cornball, but still undeserving of the lampooning he got from the national media and all that shade. But that's the thing is, you know what? Today is a day for kind of exercising the demons, allowing the sadness and disappointment of losing a perennial guy like Simmons. This is the day to let those emotions kind of rule and kind of lead the day, so to speak. But I'm telling you right now, I immediately am more in line with what Mike's saying here. The second half, I'm going to enjoy the season watching the new young talent. I am too, because look, Sean Payton is definitely creating more pressure on himself, and he isn't doing himself any favors, Zach, relative to how the fans view him. But I still trust his ability to coach. I still trust his ability to, put together a competent team that can compete on Sundays. And it will be unique seeing how that's going to look if this trend continues. I mean, we don't know, but like if Garrett Bowles is gone, if Sutton's gone, like all the leaders and all the dudes making the big money, they're gone. It will be fun to see how the young guys and the lesser known people that come in to fill those shoes, how they shake out.
Yeah, Mike, I really resonate with your last sentence there. Soon enough, hopefully, the Broncos will be discussed without Russell Wilson being referenced, without being tied in one way or the other to the Russell Wilson disaster. And for that, I'm hopeful. And for that, I'm grateful they decided to rip the Band-Aid off and move on. The young talent, like I said, the Simmonses and the Russes and all the players and McManus's last year, they didn't contribute anything in the last 8 years to the Broncos winning. God willing, they get a whole new crop of talent. They hit on the draft, and that's the new foundation, and they can start a new era. They're going to break in a rookie quarterback more than likely. To me, that's exciting, watching him progress and develop throughout the year under Sean Payton. It's not, I don't know. I'm feeling a little more optimistic than saying, oh, this is below rock bottom. The Broncos are the worst team in the NFL. Blow it up, tear it down. I'm saying tear it down, but they're going to build it back up, and they're going to build it back. I don't want to sound political. They're going to build it back.
I was just going to say, wait a minute. Are you on the stump?
Definitely not. You know me too well, Chad, but they're going to build it back stronger. I'll use that word.
Ryan, top rope super chat. Much love and respect, my friend. Helping us keep the lights on. You the man. He says, what up, Priest? I loved Simmons, but this is the first of many casualties that need to happen. We all know we are more than likely not going to be competitive. Hopeful, but doubtful. Let's rebuild, get back to the respectable franchise that we were. That's a good way of putting it. Hopeful, but doubtful. I mean, that's saying, hey, we're still going to hope and shoot for the stars, but we all know realistically, if you're missing the dogs like your Simmons and the dogs like Bowles and your dogs like Sutton, let alone who knows what it's going to look like at quarterback. You tell that to anyone that's being intellectually honest about it, they're going to go, yeah, good luck competing this year. But we don't know who's going to fill those shoes and if any of all those moves I just mentioned, so to speak, are going to happen. But I loved him too. It does feel like some of these things needed to happen, though.
Ryan, thank you so much. It's so generous of you. Appreciate you hopping in and discussing the news with us tonight. I'll put it this way, and I'll keep it brief. The only way the Broncos get back to respectability, the only way the Broncos get back to being a perennial contender is by going through the rebuild. If they don't, they're going to continue being stuck in purgatory, throwing crap at the wall and hoping it sticks. None of it stuck in the last 8 years. Let's try a different approach, tear it down to the studs, and again, build it back in a more beneficial way.
So listen, Justin Simmons, they say 14.5. I don't recall exactly what his salary was. Maybe it was just straight up 14.5 million. He deserves to make whatever the top of the market for safety money is. Like, he's earned that level of compensation. But for a team like the Broncos that is so teetering and in need of help in so many different areas, it's kind of like you're living in a shack, so to speak, but every nickel you've got and then some, like you begged, borrowed, and stolen to be able to afford that Beamer that you can park on the curb, so to speak. That's kind of what it means to be a team like the Broncos, paying a safety $15 million. I mean, the top paid guy on an APY in the NFL, Zach, at safety is Derwin James with the Chargers, making $19 million this year. Minka Fitzpatrick with the Steelers, 18.2. Antoine Winfield on a franchise tag, if I'm not mistaken, at 17. Then Jesse Bates with the Falcons, 16. Harrison Smith, 16. Budda Baker, 14, etc. The Broncos just aren't in a position where that really makes much sense. And you go to a player like Simmons that has yet to win. Like, the only thing he has to hang his hat on is my individual resume that I've produced, which garnered me this lucrative extension that you're all coming to me and asking me to maybe like tweak and take a back seat on. I'm not going to do it. And I'm sure that was his rationale, and he deserves all power to him. Find a place out there, find a team out there that's willing to play ball and pay you on a level commensurate with what you're worth. For a team like the Broncos, it's a little bit harder to say a player, even as great as Simmons is, a safety is worth $15 million a year when you're $20 million over the cap and you don't have a quarterback. Ryan, again, though, thank you, bud. He says this blame is on George Paton and Russ. The owners had nothing to do with this. Sean Payton has nothing to do with this. We will be back, but it will take time. Denver Broncos for life. Zach.
Well, you're 100% spot on with your analogy, Chad. First of all, having a Beamer on the curb, but your house is being foreclosed on and there's termites and the roof is leaky and collapsing. They got to do things the right way. They have to have a nice house and then worry about the other dalliances of life after that. I don't know that Peyton had nothing to do with it. It was Chad and I were talking about this before we went on. Simmons put out a statement, and omitted from that statement, whether intentional or not, was one Sean Payton. Sean runs the show. Sean is the GM. Sean is the head coach. Sean is the president. Sean is the shot caller. So if they made a decision to move on from Simmons, that came from Sean Payton. I don't know how we're blaming Russ for this, because he signed a contract the Broncos put in front of him and then didn't want to have to give back money he wasn't obligated to give back. This falls more on the management of the team. You can blame George Paton for all the big bloated contracts he's handed out, the extensions. Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, they restructured a year after that. How about Randy Gregory? How about some of these deals that put them where they are now? So everyone, what did Sean Payton say about Russ months ago? Everyone has the stink on them with the decision or whatever, with how it went. This is kind of the same thing, but I'm telling you, this came from up top, and up top is Sean Payton.
Let's grab here Dennis Woods, one of our great longtime superstars, Michigan, if memory serves. Good to see you. Look, he's still rocking the MHH dad hat like a boss. A couple of supers wants to know, Zach, will George Paton be fired after the draft?
I don't think so. And I actually heard Scott echo a point I made today on Broncos for Breakfast that George Payton's best quality is taking the arrows for Sean Payton, is being the punching bag, being the scapegoat, being the whipping boy. As long as he's around and employed in his figurehead title, Sean Payton will take a little less of the heat. It could happen after the draft, Chad. It usually, they get the draft in place, then revamp everything after that. I think he's going to keep George around for just that reason as long as he can. It's one more scapegoat in his back pocket.
I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but George Payton is the Lee Majors of this situation. He's the fall guy. You know what I'm saying, Dennis? You know what I'm talking about, Dennis. Ryan, again, bro, thank you. He says, start trade talks, pardon me, for everyone with value. We need capital. Indeed, those talks are happening, I'm sure, as we speaketh, basically. Like, they're ongoing. The new league year starts next Wednesday. Is it Wednesday the 13th? It's the 13th, but I'm trying to think. Yeah, Wednesday.
It really starts Monday, though, with legal tampering.
Right. But in terms of the deadlines, when teams need to be compliant on X, Y, Z, that's the day. Yeah. Naj, again, bro, thank you. He says, brothers, I get everything you're saying, and I love being hopeful. All I'm saying is we need good football players, and based on recent free agent signings, trades, and drafts, we haven't gotten them. No more excuses. Nothing you said there is – I'm not picking any nits in anything you said there. It's just one of those things where it's like, man, you go through all the rigmarole and the sacrifice, Zach, and the time and the patience and all that stuff to develop a young safety into an elite guy. And a guy that, if he stays in Denver and ends up becoming part of a rebuild that goes on to bear fruit with playoff wins and who knows, world championships, if he's still around for that, that's a Hall of Fame resume. That's he's at like a halfway there resume if things, were to have taken a positive track following this kind of rebuild thing they're doing. It just hurts to lose guys like that. And the Broncos, on one hand, Naj, they need every good football player they can get. But at the same time, due to some of the mistakes of the past relative to, the Russ contract in particular, like, honestly, this is happening. The Justin Simmons release is happening because the Broncos paid Russ, and they're having to deal with the reality of $85 million in dead cap just this year alone. I mean, God bless the NFL, Zach, for raising the cap as much as they did this year. That's definitely a nice little assist for a team like the Broncos. But, you were almost talking about half your cap, dang near half your cap being consumed in dead money by a dude this year. How can you compete? Even if you weren't over the cap, how can you compete? You got to cut some guys. You got to make some moves and just err on the side of young guys and coaching. And it's unfortunate that it had to be such a perennial key guy to us, right? Justin Simmons. But it is what it is. And yeah, no more excuses, big dog.
It wasn't just paying Russell Wilson. It was also choosing to cut him the first year that contract went into effect. So they knew the consequences of doing so, and they still went on with it, which I appreciate and I respect. I am all for a rebuild and doing it right this time, a full measure, not a half measure. Naj, again, I get what you're saying. I get the fan point of view, but to use your context here, Simmons is indisputably a good player. I don't think he's a great player. I don't think he's a Hall of Fame player, but he's a good player. How much of the Broncos won with Justin Simmons? He's led the NFL in picks since 2016. How many playoff games has that gotten the Broncos? How many winning records has that gotten the Broncos? It's time for a different approach. And you might disagree with Sean Payton's approach, but I'm glad he's taking a hammer to it and doing something different.
Like, there is some comfort in that, in admitting that you guys have heard me say this a million times. All the Von Millers, D. Wares, Chubbs, Simmonses, Surtans weren't enough to move the needle for the Broncos because they didn't have a quarterback. All right, so once you get that quarterback, then all of a sudden everything becomes possible again. So that really has to be the focus of this offseason. It's specifically, Zach, as it pertains to the NFL draft is, hey, whether we've got Justin Simmons on the roster or not, we are actually dead in the water till we solve quarterback. So let's solve quarterback first things first. William, thank you, big dog. Good to see you. says, where do we begin letting Simmons go? What were we thinking? I understand the cap issues, but I guess that's football. Who do we bring in now as we are short of leaders? Yeah, it's hard to say what they're going to do. I mean, again, free agency wise, Zach, as it stands currently, they can't do jack squat. Like if the new league year opened tomorrow, they're still basically hamstrung relative to the salary cap. So it's hard for me to sit here and like throw names out there, what you're going to do. They're going to, Zach, lean on a guy that is a free agent, but they're going to somehow find a way to bring him back. And that's where it starts, bringing this guy back and finding a way, because that's the other biggest thing here, Zach, is the leadership vacuum that gets created with Simmons' exit. But you had the article for us on I guess the guy they're going to lean on to be their new guy at safety.
Well, maybe. Yeah, I dropped it in the comments for anyone who wants to read the article. According to the Denver Gazette, the Broncos are looking into re-signing PJ Locke, who started 8 games last year in place of Caden Stearns and Kareem Jackson. He's an unrestricted free agent. It shouldn't cost that much money. That's a no-brainer for me, but that's not enough because all you have behind him, Chad, is Stearns, who's injury-prone, JL Skinner, who was not good as a rookie, and DTY, who's not good overall. So I think that position will be bolstered, and if the Broncos can find a little money, it's kind of funny, Chad. We'll get to David in 1 second. What the Buffalo Bills did 2 days ago is what the Broncos are doing and did today. They're cutting a lot of bloated contracts and reloading in certain areas. One guy they cut was Jordan Poyer, former All-Pro safety. If the money's right and he wants to come to Denver, which is a big if, that would be, to me, a perfect veteran replacement for Simmons to be bookending PJ Locke.
David, the Rocking K77, as he is known on X, jumping in with a very generous super chat. Appreciate you, David. You the man. He says, what do you guys see us doing in free agency as far as picking up anyone? Will we be going for big names? What do you guys see us doing? Okay. So, Zach, we kind of inadvertently stepped on this question with our previous answer, but maybe talk a little bit more about this real quick for David, because he's going top rope.
Well, and it all depends on the money, David. Jordan Poyer, for example, who was cut by the Bills, veteran safety, kind of like a Simmons in his own mold. He'd probably want to chase a ring or want a lot of guaranteed money, neither of which the Broncos can offer. They're probably going to aim to secure their own in-house guys. We talked about PJ Locke. They brought back Jonas Griffith. They brought back Michael Bandy. And they also want to bring back Quinn Bailey, who's a free agent, the offensive lineman. So it's unless they are going to restructure or trade or cut and free up millions, I wouldn't expect the Broncos to be dipping their toes in the A tier of free agency. And George Payton said it himself, Chad, that he doesn't expect to be shopping from the top shelf. The clearance rack is more likely.
Yeah. So, but just in this, for the sake of covering the bases, the Broncos really are going to have to, like I talked about earlier, lean on their youth and their coaching. But if they make a few more cuts and get under the cap and they decide safety, bringing in another veteran to complement, I mean, the PJ Locke deal is not done yet. We can't exactly count on that. Right. But here are a few of the top names, just so you know who's out there. You got Jamal Adams, street free agent. This is all per over the cap. Eddie Jackson, Quandre Diggs, Kevin Byard, Micah Hyde, Rayshawn Jenkins, Tracy Walker. Zach mentioned Jordan Poyer. Those are the top names on the market. Broncos aren't going to be fishing in that pond. I'm telling you right now, they don't have the means to fish in that pond. It's value street guys, and it really kind of depends on what kind of money they end up having to work with by the time you get to the legal tampering period opening up, and the guys that kind of fit what Vance Joseph and Sean Payton are looking to do. But Vance Joseph does have a good eye for that. He's a longtime secondary coach turned defensive coordinator. I trust in that, at least I believe in that as at least a little bit of a leg up if they do go to the well of free agency, even the bargain bin, to bring guys in. All right, Mike Edel jumping in again. He says there will be zero pressure on us next year, so whatever positives happen will all be wins. Yeah, I mean, even if they, Zach, move mountains and get, say, a Drake May in the draft somehow, expectations are going to be low, right? I mean, Broncos fans, though, here's the caveat to that. Broncos fans are some, some needy fans in the best sense, meaning expectations are always at the bowling level. But still, the pressure, if anyone feels pressure, it's going to be Sean Payton. But Zach, only from the outside. Because trust, when you're making tectonic moves of the nature the Broncos have this week, that's not without not only the blessing of ownership, but like the blessing of ownership and the given understanding by ownership that do what you got to do. We got your back. We get it. This is going to be painful. We're in it for the long haul. We got you.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, I made this point earlier. I'm glad you kind of seconded it. Going into next year, for the first time, maybe since Peyton Manning retired, which was eight years ago yesterday, by the way, long, rough and tumble 8 years that's been. No one should have expectations, like you said. So if the Broncos lose, unlike the last couple seasons, no one's going to really care. They're going to expect that. But if the Broncos win, hey, it's an added bonus. That to me is the beauty of it. And they're going to develop, God willing, a rookie quarterback along the way and set themselves up to compete in 2025.
All right. Before we do some rapid fire, we're sitting here at 41 minutes. Before we do some rapid fires, I just want to say hello to the Mile High Duchy, Albert in the house. Good to see you, big dog. Up for a rebuild and another losing season. We shall see, my friend. Also, just a shout out to Greg Smith, OG in the chat on Facebook. Great to see you, big dog. And of course, Pearl. Hope you're doing well. Shout out. Okay, moving in. Let's do some rapid fire here because we are getting a little bit close. We have time, but let's get through this here. Taylor, good to see you, big dog. Thank you for the super chat. He says, this one hurts, guys. Seeing Justin go was hard. Got to meet him in person a while back. I'm sad because we never got to win with him. He wanted to win. Yeah, dude. One of the most gut-wrenching images. When I think of Justin Simmons, Zach, majority of my memories of Justin are going to be positive, and whatever negative memories there have, by and large, with very few exceptions, outside of, say, as you mentioned, the Sam Darnold romp, the negative things that might come to mind or the bummer things are, I can remember abjectly, like it's stuck in my head. It's the dead period on the NFL calendar, 2022. The Broncos had earlier the offseason acquired 9-time Pro Bowler Russell Wilson via trade. Like, here we go. He's only missed the playoffs twice in a decade. And then you get to the dead period, meaning June and half of July on the NFL calendar where nothing's happening. So the Broncos team site, Zach, they start rolling out a few interviews and different things that they say for that period to get them through the content drought, so to speak. One of those was an interview with Justin Simmons where it was postured to him like, hey, you've been here through the thin. I mean, you're here for the thick and thin, but like it's been all thin basically since you've been here. And now Russ is here. How are you feeling about this team's outlook? This was Nathaniel Hackett year one before cleats had ever even hit the grass. And I'll never forget him very confidently just being like, yeah, we finally got our guy. Like this time it's different. This isn't, Teddy. This isn't Joe Flacco. This isn't Case Keenum. Like, this is Russell Wilson. He didn't say it exactly like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm paraphrasing and kind of like reading between the lines. But the main takeaway being this time it's going to be different. And man, you're right. Like I've, really kind of been through it all, but it's going to be so much sweeter when we turn the ship around this year because we got Russ and just seeing it. And I remember watching it in real time when it first came out going, man, that's not going to age well if it doesn't go swimmingly. Turns out, unfortunately, didn't go swimmingly. So that is such a bummer for him. He went through 8 years of the desert with the Broncos, and yet he provided for the majority of those 8 years, Zach, one accolade after another on the field stuff, not to mention all the off the field stuff.
And it's funny that you bring that up because my memory of Simmons was after the 2022 season when after the last game, he had his press conference and he apologized to Broncos country for another letdown, for another non-playoff year. Commendable, good player, great teammate, amazing human. No one is disputing that. But it was just time to move on, and it's time to let him go. You know how they say if you love someone, let them go? We need to let Simmons go. He's going to be 31. He hasn't won jack what in the NFL. He was highly paid and I think underproducing, Chad, relative to his salary and the expectation with that. It's time to move on. That's what happens. And one more thing. And I'm nothing against you, Taylor, but fans can't look at this team through an emotional lens. They have to look at it through a factual and logical lens. You don't root for the player on the front of the jersey. You root for the team. I screwed that up. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
We know, though.
It's for the best interests of the Broncos to do this. That's all I'm going to say.
Ryan jumping in again, saying, I blame Russ for not playing up to his paycheck. And then he also says, if I remember right, didn't Sean Payton I'm sure he meant to say George Payton extend him before he even stepped on the field. Sean Payton tried to make Russ work. Russ was not good for the money he got. Now listen, I will agree with Ryan on this point I'm about to say here that he's making initially relative to Russ. He did not live up to his contract. We can point to all the ancillary reasons why you might confuse or excuses as well. Bottom line is, Zach, he did not live up to the level commensurate with the cost of the Broncos to get him from Seattle. And then later, the extension. And yes, you're not wrong on your remembrance, Ryan, in terms of the contract being extended before he even took a regular season snap. The only thing you're wrong on, I'm sure it was just a typo or whatever it was. Of course, Sean Payton wasn't around when this happened. It was George Payton, Zach.
And no offense, Ryan, I'm not really trying to single you out. I'm just getting tired of hearing about the criticism that the Broncos paid him before he played a game. The trade wasn't going to happen unless he got that contract. It was all part of the negotiation. He had a no trade clause, and there was a wink, wink, nod, nod agreement that he would be signed upon being traded to Denver. So George Payton's hands were tied. And you know what? Still, I don't fault George Payton for taking that swing, and I never will. It didn't work out, but at the time, hindsight's a hell of a drug. At the time, it was the right thing to do.
Michael Davis jumping in. Thank you, big dog. So good to see you tonight. He says, Priest, welcome to Bottom Feeding Cap Hell 2024. Seriously, though, can the George Payton, Sean Payton combo draft us out of this? George Payton's resume stinks thus far. Hashtag MHH. I don't think it stinks. Like, I mean, where are we at? We're at 47 minutes. All right. Stand by, Zach, because I want to pull up. I want to remind everybody, and maybe in so doing, I'll remind myself. Maybe I'll be proven wrong in the final analysis here. But just real quick, this is draft class number 1 under George Payton. 2021, Patrick Surtain, Javonte Williams, stud, Quinn Miners, stud, Baron Browning, stud, Caden Stearns, stud when he's healthy, but we won't count him as a stud. So 4 out of 5 so far studs. Seth Williams, Jamar Johnson, gone. Kerry, these are late rounds. Kerry Vincent, long gone. Cooper, as a 7th round pick, stud. Marquise Spencer, long gone. All right, let's get to year 2. 2022, Nick Bonito, little sketchy at year 1. Year 2, everyone's damn glad they got some Nick Bonito waiting in the wings and available. Greg Dulcich, stud when healthy, but that's a huge asterisk for Dulcich, the whole health thing. Damari Mathis, jury's still out, but Zach, that's kind of trending toward lame-o. Uwazurike, suspended last year because of the gambling thing. You know, we kind of forget about him. He'll be back this year. Still kind of jury's still out. Delaware Turner Yell, jury's out in a technical sense, Zach, but I'm not foreseeing that one progressing too much different than what it's been so far. Montreal Washington already gone. Luke Wattenberg, we'll see what happens with Lloyd Cushenberry. I mean, it's a dang good likelihood that he's gone, and you're going to need a starter. Is it going to be Wattenberg? Is it going to be Forsyth? Matt Henningsen, you know, for a 6th round pick, I think he's done quite well for himself. Fionn Hicks, nah. And then we get to this past season, Zach. Marvin Mims, Pro Bowl stud. Drew Sanders, I think, will end up being a Pro Bowl caliber guy. I'll just say starting guy that you're going to be dang glad was made the highest drafted linebacker for the Broncos since DJ Williams. Riley Moss, I mean, jury's still out on this class especially, but I like what his upside might be. JL Skinner, you know, he didn't see a lot of time this year, and when he did, it was a little sketchy. And then Alex Forsyth, who Sean Payton eyeballed as starter potential. So in the draft, George Paton, in my opinion, has done significantly better than he's given credit for. Free agent and veteran stuff, Zach, that's been his shortcoming.
Yeah, and the thing about the draft is I feel like George Paton's reputation is based a lot on that initial 2021 draft, and it's so hard to hit on as many picks as they did. It was a great haul by the Broncos, but a little unrealistic to expect every year. One thing you didn't mention, though, is the players that were not drafted that George Paton scouted. Jaleel McLaughlin, Jaquan McMillian. He does have a great eye for talent. That's his strongest ability, and that's probably why Sean Payton is keeping him around.
Well said. Desert Creature jumping in. Great to see you. Appreciate the super. Says, I'm excited about the Broncos' future with Sean Payton. History is echoing. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that last point, but once I get over my disappointment of Justin Simmons no longer being a Bronco, that's where I know that I'm going to end up posture-wise, is just kind of being excited to see how this takes shape, because it really looks like they're doing it the hard way. They're ripping every Band-Aid off. I mean, you've got bullet holes. You're riddled, right? You just came off of Omaha Beach on D-Day. You're riddled, and you've got Band-Aids over these bullet holes that aren't helping you. But they're kind of fooling your mind into thinking you can get another half mile down the road because you vanquished those dadgum Germans. But in the reality, you're bleeding out. So finally you're being honest with yourself. You're ripping off the Band-Aids. You're laying down on the street. You're going, medic, take care of this. You can't go any farther. You've lied to yourself. You thought you could trick yourself into getting all the way down to Berlin, but not. You got to lay down on the road. You got to take the time, suffer the pain, suffer everything of getting them stitched up and fixed the right way. And then hopefully sooner than later, you'll be back on your feet and you can make that march. And that's where they're at. So maybe in that sense, Desert Creature, history is really echoing.
Very well said, very creative. History is also echoing in the sense that Sean Payton's been here 1 year and the Broncos are already in salary cap hell, just like all those New Orleans teams for many years. But on the real, though, I am excited that if the Broncos are going to be going through this, I talked about 2017, if they would have done it then, a rebuild, who would have led the charge? Vance Joseph? That would have been a disaster. So I'm grateful that there's an adult, a competent coach leading the way if they are going to, and they will tear it down.
All right. We're about out of time here. We've got the original Dizzy D. Thank you, big dog. Appreciate the super. Could you see Riley Moss possibly being moved to safety? Is the question white corner? Is the question white corner? Wouldn't surprise me, right? Remember that from Sean Payton? The guy kind of hemming and hawing around the Jason Sehorn thing. And then, finally he's like impatient. Is the question white corner? It's interesting because they have needs at both spots, right? He was drafted to play corner, knowing that he's so physical and he's long enough. He could play safety. It will be interesting to see how that shakes out, Zach, because they've got cornerback needs and now obviously a big gaping hole at safety.
Damn you, Chad, for always sharing a brain with me. It's true that they have two positions they have to fill. They can't have Damari Mathis as a starter opposite Surtain. They're not going to bring back Fabian Moreau. McMillian is a slot guy. So what's a more valuable position, cornerback or safety? That would be the former. So I would rather, if they're going to commit Moss to one spot, keep him there. Don't Drew Sanders, DeMarcus Walker him. If he's going to be a safety, let him be a safety. If he's going to be a corner, let him be a corner. But if I had to choose, Chad, I'd rather keep him at corner, just a more valuable position.
Amen. James Moss jumping in, rocking his football priest t-shirt. Love it, dude. So good to see you, James. Appreciate it. He says, missed you guys together. Well, we miss being together as well. This is like our thing. And we missed you guys, obviously. I did, I should say. Shout out to everyone who held it together. While I was gone. Yeah, dude, MHH, it's become its own thing. It's long ago, Zach, took on a life of its own. Like, I have no plans of relinquishing my job on the mic or writing or any of that stuff. But like, if I did step down, it would march on a pace. If I just took on like an editing role, we've got such a great staff here, of course, led by Zach. He says, I tried donating to the morning show, but it's just too early for me. Love you guys. It's pretty early for me too. I'm not going to lie. I'm more of a night owl, Zach, than I am a early bird. You know what I'm saying?
Same, and I definitely would miss you, Chad. It would not be the same at all. Your Musk would forever live on, though, in the annals of MHH podcast.
Oh, well, we don't have to worry about that for now. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Okay, guys, I'm just going to do a quick cruise through here. We don't have Scott tonight. He's celebrating some fun family stuff this evening. So I'm just doing a quick skim through. Let me see Colby again saying we need to get younger. I have high expectations 2 years from now. 9 wins. One of these next 2 seasons would be gravy. Some stuff is going to hurt, but let's finally rebuild. Let's see. Oh, where'd it go? It just jumped. Don't do that to me, StreamYard. I hate it when you jump. There it is. Robot of Doom on Twitch. Always trying to get one Twitch. Robot says, if we want to keep ripping the Russ contract, how about the Browns and Deshaun Watson? That's worse than us.
Yes.
Yeah, true.
Fully guaranteed deal for a guy that was rife with character issues. And one thing you could say about Russ, no off the field issues.
True. Other than the campy cornball, but
non-legal issues.
Exactly. Or like ethical, right? Like no one's running around kind of trying to hide their face because something their quarterback, Broncos fans anyway, their quarterback did off the field. Ronk, brother. He says, one of my favorite Justin Simmons moments is his interception, placing it on the 88 patch logo on the sidelines, dedicating it to the late, great Demaryius Thomas. Yes, indeed. That was a sweet moment. And that's just the kind of guy he is. Like, First of all, Zach, to have the heart to do that, obviously right on Justin Simmons, but also the presence of mind in that moment to go, here's what I'm doing. Iconic moment.
Like I said, great human being, good player, amazing teammate. You'd love to have 11 Simmonses on your defense, but after 8 seasons, he's going on 31 years old, $14.5 million. It just is time to move on.
Nick Hale jumping in. What's up, big dog? He says, my priest, I wish Simmons all the best. I know he wanted so badly to turn the ship around and get it right while he was here. But when one door closes, a new opportunity opens for him and for the Broncos. Yep. Much love. Well said, bro. Mike Reno, love the pod. Chad, Zach, and Scott can't afford to contribute, but we'll always support y'all. Hey, dude, biggest contribution any of you can make is being here.
That's right.
7 nights a week at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. That's all we can ask. So we're out of here, but before we do, we got a couple messages for you.
I can't believe it's been 57 minutes already. Another tremendous installment, as always, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle. Chad is at Chad and Jensen. I'm at Kelberman NFL, and our producer Scott is at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't, also please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every single month. But if anything, folks, guys and gals, ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
A mile-high salute and a special shout-out to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters tonight. Before I read this list of names, just understand that I do feel your pain. I share it. When I say I feel it, I also share it. Like, it sucks losing Justin Simmons. It sucks coming to terms with the reality that this is a team that is probably not going to be competitive in 2024. That's a harsh thing to swallow and a harsh implication, as accurate as it is, on the heels of losing such a great player. But there's also excitement and hope in seeing how an actual rebuild done the right way, ostensibly with competent people to oversee it, could shake out. So shout out to David McElrath, that's the Papa Bear, David Youngkin, Casey Nickel, The Duchess, Michaela Parker, Mount Rushmore, Naj, Altaf, Mount Rushmore, Bakes Production, Colby C. Collier, Phil McLaughlin, The Ronk, that's Michael Ronquillo, Cody Dubb, Mike Edel, Mount Rushmore, Ryan Top Rope, and multiple supers. Thank you, bro. Dennis, so good to see Dennis Woods in the house tonight, bro. William James Baker on Facebook, David Kilgore, a longtime superstar. Let's see, we got Taylor Christensen. Thank you, bro. Michael Davis, Desert Creature, the original Dizzy D, James Moss, all 3 of you and everyone I just mentioned. Much love and respect. Thank you very much Zach and I will be back, of course, Sunday night. There is no Legends of Mile High to look forward to any longer Friday morning. So look forward to instead next show, Dove Valley Deep Divers. Tomorrow night, Eric Trickle, Lance Sanderson. Going to be dope.
Well, have a great start to your weekend, folks. We'll see you Sunday night. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.